Atmana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha. Mayarpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha. Nam pashyami param bhutam akritaham samam darshanat. Na pashyami param bhutam akartu samadarshanat. Na pashyami param bhutam akarutha samadarshanat. Tasman mai arpitesha kriyartatma nirantaram. Kriyartatma nirantara. Mai arpitatmano pumsa mai sanyasta karmanaha. Na pashyami param bhutam akarutha samadarsanat. Dasman mai arpita shesha kriyatatma nirantaram. Mai arpitatmano pumsa mai sanyasta karmanaha. Na pashyami param bhutam akaruta samadarshana. Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyartatma nirantara. Mai arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmana. Na pashyami param bhutam akruta samadarsanat.
Tasman mai arpita sesha kriyatatma nirantara.
Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyatatma nirantara.
Mai arpita mana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha.
Mai arpita mana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha.
Na pashyami param bhutam akartu samadarsanat.
Na pashyami param bhutam akartu samadarsanat.
Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyatatma nirantara.
Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyartatma nirantara.
Mai arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha.
Mai arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmana. Na pashyami param bhutam akruta samadarsanat. Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyatmatma nirantara. Mai arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha. Na pashyami param bhutam akartu akartu. Marjis?
Tasman maya pita shesha kriyatatmana nirantara.
Tasman mai arpita shesha kriyatatma nirantara.
Mai arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha.
Maya arpitatmana pumso mai sanyasta karmana. Na pashyami param bhutam akrita samadarshanath. Tasman maya arpita shesha kriyatmatma nirantara. Maya arpitatma pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha. Na pashyami param bhutam akrita samadarshanath. Transliteration, please repeat after me. Tasmat, than him, mai, unto me, arpita, offered, ashesha, all, kriya, actions, artha, wealth, Atma, life, soul, Nirantaraha, without cessation, Mai, unto me, Arpita, offered, Atmanaha, whose mind, Pumsaha, then a person, Mai, unto me, Sanyasta, dedicated, karmanaham, whose activities, nam, not, pashyami, I see, param, greater, bhutam, living entity, akartuhu, without proprietorship, samam, same, Darshanat, whose vision. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. Please repeat after me. Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything unto me without cessation. Purport. In this verse, the word Samadarshanath means that he no longer has any separate interest. The devotee's interest and the Supreme Personality of Godhead's interest are one. For example, Lord Chaitanya, in the role of a devotee, also preached the same philosophy. He preached that Krishna is the worshipable Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the interest of his pure devotees is the same as his own. Sometimes Mayavadi philosophers, due to poor fund of knowledge, define the word Samadarshanath to mean that a devotee should see himself as one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. When one thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of serving him. When there is service, there must be a master. Three things must be present for there to be service: the master, the servant, and the service. Here, it is clearly stated that he who has dedicated his life, all his activities, his mind and his soul, everything, for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, is considered to be the greatest person. The word akarutaha means without any sense of proprietorship. Everyone wants to act as the proprietor of his actions so that he can enjoy the result. A devotee, however, has no such desire. He acts because the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants him to act in a particular way. He has no personal motive. When Lord Chaitanya preached Krishna consciousness, it was not with the purpose that the people would call him Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he preached that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and should be worshipped as such. A devotee who is a most confidential servant of the Lord never does anything for his personal account, but he does everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. It is clearly stated, therefore, Mai sanyasta karmanaha. The devotee works, but he works for the Supreme. It is also stated, Mai arpitatmanaha. He gives his mind unto me. These are the qualifications of a devotee who, according to this verse, is accepted as the highest of all human beings. Chai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya namine gauratise namaha. He Krishna karuna sindhu deenabandho jagatpate gopesha gopika kanta radha kanta namostute thapta kanchana gaurangi radhe vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Tavaivasmi na jivami tavaivina iti vigya devitvam nayamam charanantikam mukham karoti vatsalam pangolangayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru dinatarinam. Hare Krishna, good morning. Welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam class. Explanation of devotional service spoken by Kapila Muni to his beloved mother Devahuti. Here Kapila Muni describes, he gives his opinion who is considered the greatest person. In previous verses we saw the evolution of consciousness from lower living entities all the way to a Brahminical standard, to a Brahminical culture. And now, on top of that Brahminical culture, the people who practice the Brahminical culture, Here Krishna differentiates, Kapiladev differentiates the people who are much more greater than just following, just being in Brahminical culture. And he addresses them as the greatest persons because they have no outside interest other than the desire of Krishna. And they also engage all their activities and all their life, everything, for the service of the Lord, with a caveat, is without cessation, without stopping, without having a break. So they are considered the topmost devotees according to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 9:30, is it 9:34? No, it's 7:3. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin maham veti tattvataha. Of Manushyanam sahasreshu, of all the living, of all the human beings, of all the humans, Manushyanam sahasreshu, of thousands and thousands of human beings, only few of them are interested to know about Krishna, to know the tattva, to understand who Krishna is, or to try to understand. And out of this sahasreshu, thousands of individuals, only few actually succeed in the process of understanding. And even out of these people who succeed, only few, only a handful actually knows who Krishna himself is. So, to knowing Krishna is not an ordinary matter. It takes a very expert person, very qualified person, to actually know who Krishna is. And this person who knows Krishna, who understands Krishna as it is very rare. It's not something which we come across easily. That person is very, very rare. And you know, similar verse here, what Kapila Muni is speaking. So to understand Krishna, Vedanta sutras describe the three concepts: Sambandha, Prayojana, and Abhidaya. The first is Sambandha Gyan, to understand the relationship. To understand a relationship between two parties, here happen to be the devotee and the Lord, but any Sambandha Gyan, any relationship, one first need to understand who he is. One needs to understand who he is. Without knowing who you are, you can't really have a relationship with somebody else. First you need to understand who he is. That's why Bhagavad Gita starts with understanding who we are. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitava na bhuyaha ajo nityam shashvatoyam puranam ahanyate hanyamane sharire. So the Bhagavad Gita starts by saying, we are not this body. We don't take birth. We don't die. We are eternal. Hanyate hanyamane sharire. Even if the body dies, we remain. So when Krishna is saying we here, who is he referring to? Who is he referring to? He is referring to the soul, the spirit soul. And the spirit soul is us. We are the spirit soul. First we need to understand that we are spirit soul and not this body. And this body is temporary and it's going to perish. So first is to know who you are. First to know who you are, that you are spirit soul and you're not this body. Generally, everyone, the entire population, think that they are this body. And they act on the priorities of the body. Now, whatever the body demands, that becomes their priority. So that's how the world revolves. But having the wrong conclusion that I'm this body and ignoring the spirit soul, all the activities performed are limiting to the body. So the activities performed by living entities doesn't relate to who he actually is. So that is the Sambandha Gyan, first understanding who you are. And also understanding the other party. The other party here is, who is the other party here in this topic? Krishna. Krishna is the other party. And to understand who Krishna is. And Krishna can be understood in various levels. But one should have the topmost understanding. One should not limit himself to partial understanding. So Bhagavatam says, Vadanti tadvidas tattvam yajnanam advayam what is it? Brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti sabdyataha. So Vadanti tadvidas tattvam. So one has to understand who Krishna is actually. He, even though he expresses himself as Brahman, Brahman is the impersonal effulgence form of the Lord. Brahma Samhita says, Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti koti shvashesha vasudha vibhutti binnam yat nishkalam anantamashesha bhutam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. This is a preliminary understanding that God, Krishna, is impersonal. It's preliminary understanding. He's just effulgence. There is no person, or they can't visualize, or they don't understand the person behind the effulgence. That's a preliminary understanding. So, but the Upanishads suggest that we should go beyond that. So, in Isopanishad, it says, Hiranmayena patrena vihitam mukham. Lord, please remove this impersonal glare of yours so that I can see you. So, one is required to go beyond the impersonal visualization of the Lord. This impersonal visualization of seeing or understanding the Lord as impersonal Brahman is done by people who take up the process of self-realization through speculation, through their own ability. They try to understand Krishna through their own ability. When they do that, the best they can do is come to the impersonal feature. So if you look at any modern made-up religions, they pretty much kind of end up coming to the impersonal conclusion. If you take any Western scholars like Plato or Socrates, when you read their writings on spiritual understanding, they all eventually come to impersonal conclusion because they are trying to understand by themselves, trying to understand God by themselves. So that is the first level of understanding. But devotees are required to go beyond that. And so the next level of understanding is what is the next level of understanding? Paramatma. Understanding Paramatma, the localized feature of the Lord, where the Lord expands himself and spreads himself into every atom within the body of every living entity. What is that verse from Brahma Samhita? Eko paso jagaditam jagadanda konti Yasaktarasta jagadanda chayantarastam andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamadi purusham tamaham brajami. So the second level of understanding is the Paramatma localized feature where the Lord expands himself in every living entity. He enters the heart of every living entity, and he not only every living entity, even every atom, he expands himself into every atom. So generally people who practice the yoga process, especially the Ashtanga yoga process, when they succeed through overcoming the desire for the various siddhis, they come up to the conclusion of the Paramatma feature, the feature which is present in everyone's heart. So that's the second level of realization they come into. So here, Prabhupada immediately makes a point that the Mayavadis, they think that since Krishna has, as the Lord, is spread out into every living entities, or entered every living entity, that every living entity has become God. So Prabhupada calls it's a foolish notion. Because, if a person enters a room, it doesn't mean he becomes the room. He still maintains it, and the room still remains as a room. Similarly, when Krishna enters the heart of a living entity, it doesn't mean the living entity has become God. It's just a residential place for Krishna in the form of Paramatma. He accompanies the living entity as Paramatma. And so Mayavad philosophers really exploit this and to establish themselves as God. The famous Mayavadi sannyasi from Bengal, Swami Vivekananda, he comes up with the concept of Daridra Narayan. Krishna has entered the heart of everyone, so the poor is also a Narayan, so the poor should be looked after, a poor should be worshipped. So what it means is Krishna has entered as Paramatma in a goat, so you feed the goat to the Narayan who has entered into the heart of a poor, so you feed the goat to the poor. Because it's all Brahman, it's all Narayana, so why not feed one to other? So that's the Mayavad way of looking at, Mayavad interpretation, where they justify that since Krishna has entered every living entity, that every living entity has become God. But that's a wrong understanding. In spite of number one, the second level of understanding of Paramatma is still limited, and on top of it, the Mayavadis have their own interpretation, which is even wrong. So the third understanding is the topmost understanding, where one realizes Krishna as the Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadiradir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's a person. He is not just because he has split himself into Paramatma, he hasn't lost his identity. Or because he has this effulgence doesn't mean that he's just effulgent. No, he's actually an entity, a person behind the impersonal feature. So a devotee, as part of the Sambandha Gyan, should understand himself as spirit soul and Krishna in his Bhagavan form, in the purest form of who he is. So by having that understanding who is Krishna in his purest form and who he is, then he can have the right relationship. If the understanding is limited or partial, the relationship also becomes partial. If the understanding is only, I'm just impersonal, Krishna is just impersonal Brahman, naturally the relationship you have is also partial, because there is no service with the impersonal Brahman. This effulgence. So you just want to merge into that effulgence. So naturally the relationship is also limited or partial. If one thinks the Supreme is just Paramatma, he's just present in my heart, so I'll just meditate on him, I don't need to do anything else. Again, partial. Gets limited. But understanding Krishna himself in the Bhagavan form, one can come to the conclusion that he is supreme, he is the master, and since he is the master, naturally we become the servants. And since we are the servant, the aspect of relationship becomes revealed. Unless we come to that proper understanding, proper Sambandha Gyan, that Krishna is supreme and he is the Lord and we are the servants, he is the master, the relationship aspect of being servant doesn't get revealed or doesn't become obvious. So that's a Sambandha Jnana. So a living entity comes to the right understanding who is Krishna and who is he, and establishes himself in that relationship. So that relationship, how to establish himself, the process through which one establishes in that relationship, that is called abhidaya. And in simple terms, it's a devotional service. So that through the process of devotional service, one establishes himself as the servant and Krishna as the master. And the last one is prayojana, or the ultimate benefit. Ultimate benefit is what? Based on the sambandha, based on the process, you are serving the Supreme. So Krishna, service to Krishna, Krishna, attaining Krishna is the prayojana, or the ultimate benefit. So this is what Vedanta Sutra goes into detail about explaining sambandha, prayojana and abhidaya. And Bhagavatam being the natural commentary of Vedanta Sutra, this sambandha, prayojana and abhidaya, the sambandha jnana, the relationship, knowing who is who in the zoo, the prayojana, the ultimate goal, which is Krishna, and the process by which one establishes himself is explained in Bhagavatam, in verses of Bhagavatam. So here, the process of devotional service is the abhidaya. This is the medium through which we relate with the Supreme Lord. And this process of devotional service has many levels. Many levels. First is, through one acts through knowledge. Prabhupada gives the very famous, common analogy from Hitopadesh. He says, he gives this analogy where one day the hand and the legs decided to rebel against the stomach, because all the food, all the delicious food prepared, the hand is the one which delivers it to the mouth and to the stomach. But the hand is not tasting the food. It's the tongue and it's the stomach which is actually utilizing the food. So the hands decided to rebel. It doesn't want to serve the stomach. So not understanding the sambandha of what is the duty of the hand. So the hand wants to enjoy by itself. Is it possible for the hand to eat rasgullas? No. It's not. It's not possible. I mean, the hand can pick it up. That's where it ends. So if the hand keeps protesting that, I'm not going to feed the stomach, what happens to the hand? The hand is the one which becomes weak. Even though the stomach is what enjoying, the hand is becoming weak because the nourishment is not coming through the stomach. So similarly, if a living entity is not based on the right sambandha and want to act independently, then the living entity is suffering. It's not nourished properly. But by feeding the stomach, or by feeding Krishna, by serving Krishna, naturally the hands or the living entities also are nourished. So one comes to this jnana or to this knowledge and acts out of duty. Okay, if I don't feed the stomach, I'm going to suffer. So if I don't serve Krishna, I'm going to suffer. So that's one level of understanding. You're doing it out of duty, or out of, if I don't do it, I'm going to suffer. So I better do it. So to be compliant, not to be a rebel, you do it. That's one level. The other level is, another example can be given is the same hand, we wear dhotis, just a long piece of cloth, or saris. Some people put a knot on it. Generally, you don't. If you're experienced, you don't put a knot. You just know how to tie without a knot. So it means the dhoti is just hanging there. So if you're jumping up and down in kirtan or doing some service, there are opportunities where the dhoti can come loose. But what happens then? The hand spontaneously goes and serves, goes and holds the dhoti. It is not intellectualizing it. It's not thinking, oh, if I don't serve Krishna, if I don't put the rasgulla in my mouth, I'm not going to get nourished. It's not thinking. The hand spontaneously goes to save the cloth from falling off from your body. Now there's a spontaneity there. So that's the next level. When a living entity spontaneously serves the Supreme Lord. This spontaneity comes from practice. You get up at Mangalarti every day. Naturally, about by 3 or 3:30, you're automatically awake because it becomes a second habit. It becomes spontaneous. Like the hand naturally goes to save the dhoti, it becomes spontaneous. So that is the next level, which comes out of practice, which comes out of sadhana bhakti. By performing sadhana bhakti for a long time, the spontaneity factor comes in, where you spontaneously start serving the Supreme. But there's something beyond that too. And this spontaneity is not is happening when the spontaneous action happens out of love. The hand is not rushing to save the dhoti out of love. It is doing that to protect your chastity or whatever, to not make fool of yourself. In that level, in the second level, where there is spontaneity, but the spontaneity is still self-preservation. Even the second level, you might find people who are. This happens when you're conscious. When a person is conscious, then he goes and saves himself. But if a living entity is not conscious, if a person is drunk, or he's just mesmerized by something, he's distracted by something, if a cloth falls off from him, he is not reacting. He's not reacting. We can see the living entities, who are maddened or covered by the material nature, or busy enjoying. They are standing naked in that sense, because they are not really saving themselves. They are just busy in doing whatever they're doing, not knowing that the cloth is slipping from their body, or the real soul is deprived of what action need to be taken. So even in the second level, even the spontaneous, the living entities who are materially inflicted, they are not conscious of it. So the third level is when the spontaneity is done with love. It's done understanding who Krishna is and the living entities, and having that loving relationship. You spontaneously love Krishna. You're not getting up to Mangalarti because it's part of your sadhana. You have to come so that you can get purified. No, you're actually performing devotional service spontaneously because by coming here for singing for Krishna, Krishna is becoming happy. There's this element of love, or you miss not seeing Krishna. It's both ways. Love goes both ways. It's not one way. Krishna reciprocates. One thinks that I come in the morning, or if I perform devotional service, so I'm happy to perform that service because I love Krishna. I want to perform this devotion service, and by performing that act, by seeing Krishna, we also understand that Krishna is also happy to see the living entities engaged in his service. So the spontaneity is mixed with love, comes together, and that becomes the topmost devotional service. So here. That's what Samadarshanat means. Samadarshanat means coming to an understanding that the interest of Krishna is same as interest of is the same interest as mine. So when you come to this spontaneous loving relationship with Krishna, your interests are not, it doesn't exist. When you love someone, you want to love the way that person wants to be loved, because that's what pure love means. That's unalloyed love. If a mother has a child, the mother can't just decide, I'm going to feed the child only when I get off work. I'm going to sleep now, I'm not going to feed the child. The child is crying at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to feed the child. No, the mother can't make those decisions. I don't know what they do nowadays, but generally you can't, in a general sense you can't. Because the love is dictated by the receiver, not by the giver. The love is dictated by the child. If the child cries at midnight, the mother has to get up and feed. And in spite of whatever inconvenience the mother has to face. And similarly here, Krishna is the receiver of the love. And we living entities, we are his servants. As a mother serves a child, we serve Krishna. And so when we serve Krishna, it's based on the need of Krishna. It's not on a pure level. It's not based on our convenience. I like to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I will do devotional service at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's okay, but we need to know what Krishna wants. What's his idea of expectation, so that we work on that. So by working on understanding what Krishna wants and acting on that principle, purely ignoring your needs and your benefits, that's called samadarshana. Being in oneness, not to the understanding of impersonalism, that oneness means just you all become one. No, here your idea of Krishna's expectation and my service attitude are in sync. There is no conflict of interest. And when a living entity arrives to that no conflict status, then he is considered, or she is considered, pure devotee. The same Samadarshanath there's another meaning of Samadarshanath explained in 5:18 Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmana Gavi Hastini, Sunichaiva Sapakecha, Pandita Samadarshanath. The same word Samadarshanath is used, but it's a different meaning, and that different meaning will be explained in the next verse, so I won't go into the detail of it. Here, the Samadarshanath described by Prabhupada in this particular verse is having that oneness in relationship, in spontaneous loving relationship with Krishna. To highlight this spontaneous, unalloyed, loving devotional service, to highlight that, Krishna enacted a pastime in Dwaraka to show, to set an example to the rest of the world what this spontaneous love is. So one day Krishna in Dwaraka pretended that he has a headache. Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not affected by Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. He doesn't have Jara or Vyadhi. He doesn't get old, or he doesn't get disease. So he doesn't get disease. So he enacts this pastime in Dwaraka that he has a headache. And he is the king. So they bring in the best doctors from the kingdom. But nobody could cure Krishna's headache. And Narada happened to be there witnessing this pastime. And so everybody approaches Krishna and say, okay, you tell us how to cure your headache. We tried all our means, but seems it's not working, so you better tell us how to cure your headache. So Krishna suggests that if I get the dust from the feet, lotus feet, of my devotee, and if that is smeared on my forehead, my headache will go away. Okay. All right, okay, so he has prescribed the medication. So naturally, Narada was, since Narada can travel everywhere, he was given the task of coming up with the dust of the lotus feet. So immediately Narada approached the queens of Dwarka. They immediately said, no way. He is our husband, he is our master. We are on his lotus feet. Now, his lotus feet is our worshipable position. Dust from his lotus feet is what we aspire to. There is no way we are reversing the role. There is no way we are giving, the dust from our lotus feet or from our feet. We will never allow to be touched. We are always aspiring to touch our forehead to Krishna's feet. So they declined. Narada went to other devotees and asked for the same, and they all said different. They all gave different justification. They said, if I do that, I will go to hell. If I take my contaminated feet and the dust and give that to Krishna, and he smears on his forehead, I'll be eternally condemned to hell. So I don't want to be in hellish condition. I would never do that. He's my Lord. It's not happening. So all the devotees declined. It doesn't mean these are not pure devotees, but there is a gradation. So eventually Narada Muni approaches the gopis, and he describes, Krishna, your beloved boyfriend. He is in Dwarka having come up with severe headache, and we couldn't treat him with any medicine. And Krishna suggested that the dust from his devotees is the only cure. And Narada was a bit skeptical. He was thinking, everybody has declined. These village girls, they're not educated in Shastras. Why, he was expecting that they're not going to help. But when the gopis heard the situation, they immediately, without spontaneously, they didn't even think twice. They immediately gave the dust from the lotus of their lotus feet to Narada. They handed over. They gave it to him, without considering that that Krishna is superior, they are inferior. By giving the dust from their feet is going to send them to hellish planets. No consideration. Spontaneously, they wanted to, love Krishna or serve Krishna. So when Narada Muni questioned them, look, others have declined, considering that they will end up in hellish planets, but you are not considerate of it. And the gopis were, we are happy to remain rest of our existence in hellish condition as long as Krishna is happy. Krishna is relieved of his pain. So one can understand from this story how the gopis are the topmost devotees. They are not considerate of their own happiness or distress. They are not worried about them ending up in hellish condition. They want to just serve Krishna in any way and every way. So you can see that how Krishna used this example to establish that gopis are the topmost devotees. And of course, he performs these pastimes so that living entities could aspire, not imitate, but aspire for the service of the gopis, because they are the topmost devotees and we are not. And by serving the topmost devotees, we might sometimes also come to that mood of a loving relationship. So this is how pure devotees act. For living entities who are going through the process of sadhana bhakti, this spontaneity is you might get spontaneous, but one should also be careful of not acting whimsically. Just because it is devotional service, it doesn't mean, unless one is a pure devotee, sadhakas like us, we can't act whimsically. So Narada Muni quotes from Gautamya Tantra in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, what is that verse? Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharata Vidimbina Aikantaki Hari Bhakti Tat Utpata Eva Kalpate. Devotional service performed to Vishnu should be performed within the rules and regulations and injunctions described by Shruti, Smriti and Pancharatra. Just because one theoretically understands Krishna is supreme and your servant and we should be in a loving, spontaneous relationship with him, without coming to the right maturity, one cannot act whimsically. One has to act within the injunctions of Shruti, Smriti and Pancharatra. So this verse I quoted, it says, if you act whimsically, even as a devotion service to Lord, it will only cause chaos. It will only cause chaos. So in general terms, what is this Shruti, Smriti and Pancharatra? Is the instruction set up by the Acharyas. It's detailed by Narada Muni to the Yudhishthira Maharaj in Canto 7, 7, 8 to 12. This 30 qualities he describes as a prerequisite, and Sama, Dhamma, Titiksha, Arjava. So there's 30 qualities he describes. So, and he finishes by saying, by practicing these 30 qualities, one pleases the Lord. One pleases the Supreme. And then he goes on to describing Varnashram. So in the devotion service performed by us, by sadhana, by sadhakas, by people who are still progressing, should follow the devotion service within the realm of these 30 qualities described by Narada Muni, in addition with Varnashram, according to their own nature. And Narada Muni says, this pleases the Lord. This pleases the Lord. And this incident, the description, happens when Krishna is actually present there. Krishna has been worshipped. This pastime happens when Yudhishthira Maharaj is crowned as the king. And part of the crowning ceremony, Krishna is worshipped. Bhishma recommends worshipping Krishna. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj asks this question to Narada Muni, how living entities should act. And to answer that, he's explaining, he gives us 30 qualities. Sama, Dhamma, Titiksha, Arjava, all these qualities, along with Varnashrama, with his 4 ashramas, 4 varnas, and women have their Sri Dharma, which he describes. So one has to act within the realm, within this, and perform devotional service. And by doing that, one pleases Krishna. And by pleasing Krishna, one becomes greater, a great personality. And his interests are in line with the interest of the Lord. Okay, I will finish here. It's 5 minutes to 9. Yes, Prabhu.
Thanks. Which Sanskrit word of the shloka represent interest of Lord Kapila? In the translation we can see interest outside of mind. What word does it represent? Any key word?
Dedicated from interest of mind. It says, my arpita, it's not just one word, this combination of words, it's a derived meaning. Arpita, what is it? Kriyatma nirantaraha. Without cessation, one should offer all his actions, all his wealth, and his life and soul, arpita, offered to the Lord. So, if one offers his actions, his wealth, his life and soul, the derived meaning is there is no personal interest. He is offering it for the interest of the Lord, not for his own interest. No interest outside of mine.
So what does represent the interest of the Lord? This interest we are talking about, our interest.
Yeah.
So what about the Lord's interest?
No. I'm not talking about, there is no mention of our interest. These are all Lord's interest. The Krishna's interest is one engaged in devotional service. In the purest form, spontaneous, the Vraja Bhakti, practiced by the gopis. That is the Lord's interest. That's what Krishna wants. Krishna wants everybody to be with him in Goloka, engaged in the service, in the mood of the gopis, not us becoming gopis. That's Mayavad philosophy. It means we serving in the footsteps of gopis, engaging in the service, assisting the gopis. That's the ultimate interest Krishna wants. But that's topmost. But Krishna is fair. He knows overnight you can't do that. You need to have a way you can progress. For that is sadhana bhakti within the realm of Bhagavatam 7:11, 8 to 12. One has to acquire these qualities, act on these qualities within the Varna and Ashrama and Sri Dharma boundaries, and perform devotion service, which is, for our acharyas has made it simple. Chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regulative principles, coming to attending temple program or having temple program at home, waking up early in the morning, either at home or at temple, same process, and acting within the boundaries of Varnashram and Sri Dharma, acquiring these qualities of Samadhamma Titiksha. Yeah. So these are all, as a package, pleases the Lord. And we are in the business of, devotees are in the business of pleasing the Lord. Either spontaneous or regulated. Do it make sense?
And also you mentioned the word, the second part of the first one, which you just mentioned, Kriyatatma Nirantara. Kriya, Artha, Atma. And that too, with the clause Nirantara.
Yeah.
Actually saying that, it should be without
Cessation, yeah.
Continuous.
Yeah.
Is it actually portraying the need for, the concept we hear, simple living and high thinking?
Well, simple living and high thinking will facilitate, it will facilitate nirantaraha. It will facilitate. So it's, I wouldn't say a prerequisite, but it's a conducive environment. Simple living and high thinking. Simple living, high thinking comes later. Simple living facilitates that. In simple terms, what Prabhupada wanted is devotees living in farm communities. That's what Prabhupada's idea of simple living. That's why he said it's not you and me living in one of the biggest metropolis and trying to be simple living. You can, but Prabhupada's instruction of simple living was living in the farm. What it means living in the farm, it's not because we are all farmers and agriculturists and we want to feed the world, which is secondary benefit, but the primary benefit is you lead a simple, peaceful life. You don't need to worry about going to work. You just grow something. Growing is, if you know what you're doing, it's seasonal. 3 months of work will just give you rice for the rest of the year. You come from Andhra, you know how it works. And then between seasons you just grow a little bit of vegetables. So your basic need is taken care. To go and work for somebody else and depending on their timeline. In 9 o'clock I need to log off, or run so that I can log on to my computer. doesn't exist. So that's what Prabhupada wanted, to have a simple lifestyle. So the majority of the time can be used for direct devotional service. If you're living in a farm, there is no TV at night, there is no distraction, so you go to sleep early. And if you go to sleep early, naturally you wake up early. And if you wake up early, you don't need to struggle to wake up. You wake up early, so you can, go to Mangalarti, attend Mangalarti. You can chant your rounds in the morning. You're not tired. So this is, in a synopsis, simple living. And cessation is not necessarily related to simple living. Cessation means it's the same thing what Rupa Goswami also says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma navritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam. Without sensation, without cessation. Krishna also says the same thing in Yasyam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam satata yuktanam. That's 10:10 Bhagavad Gita. Without stopping. In the sense, engaging in devotional service constantly. Engaging in devotional service constantly. So if Krishna gives, if there is a loophole, you just perform devotional service, people will just perform devotional service no offense to people who come for Purushottam Mat. In the morning, on the first day of Purushottam, the temple is filled. And the rest of the 360, it's empty. And everybody wants to offer lamps. Look, it's all good, it's all wonderful, but Krishna's idea is, I know if I give them that opportunity, they will just do it once in a blue moon. But I want satatam, constantly performing devotional service, every day, devotional service. Does that make sense? I think that Sneha had a question. Yeah.
You were just talking about, I'm going through a fall down where I'm not able to, I want practical advice on how can I get back into a habit of waking up early. And I'm also struggling with my japa where I feel so restless, I just continuously want to look at my phone, check it. There's nothing in it. Nothing. No notification, but I just want to have a look at it. I want practical advice because I do sincerely want to get back to waking up early.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially living in a big city. It's not an easy task to do. I struggle myself. Practical is not having dinner late. I'm just giving you nuts and bolts of practicality. There's various levels of you can advise on this topic. Practical way is have a light meal and have it before 5 o'clock if possible. But if you're working 9 to 5, it's hard. It doesn't. In general sense, don't if you have to have a meal late, don't have a big meal because the body is actively processing the big meal and it's taking up all the energy, so you're tired in the morning, so it's hard to wake up. So if you need to have meal, have a light meal in the evenings, and by doing that you're hungry in the morning, so you're woken up by the body. The body wakes you up sometimes. That's why sometimes I go to the kitchen and ask some devotees to give me some prasadam in the morning because I'm hungry. So naturally helps you to wake up. And these are practical ways of doing it. The phone, it's one of those things which we all struggle with. I tend to have the phone in my office desk. At home, I just leave it at the office desk. I don't take it to my bedroom. Even though the phone has benefits of listening to kirtan or lecture, but I don't take it to the bedroom. So there is a clear sense of division. The phone is on the desk. So when I go to sleep, it's not around me. So the less we see, the less we handle it, the less you want to interact with it. So it's not there around us. So these are some techniques which we can use. But generally, the overall is, if a person is based in their proper ashram and proper varna, and according to what age they are in, whatever that particular age dictates, as a student, as a grasta, having children, as a vanaprastha. So those varnashram, people see varnashram as some kind of imposition, but in actual sense, it's actually a privilege what Krishna gives according to one's body. We all have a particular body. We all ended up here, and these varnas and ashramas gives a privilege for them to act in such a way that their mind is calm. Does that make sense? And when the mind is calm, naturally it can engage in higher topics. For a teenage guy or girl, she's thinking, "Oh my God, my clock is ticking and I'm running out of time." So the mind is agitated, preoccupied. But by having that varnashram as a privilege, don't see it as imposition. As a privilege, act according to the instructions of Krishna. The body, the mind, everything is in line, or is conducive. So the mind is peaceful. So when the mind is peaceful, your actions you can control the actions. So that's giving from a top-down approach. Top-down approach, and bottom approach is making necessary arrangements around. Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody had again, this time is running out. If anybody wants to leave, please leave. I will just answer the questions. Yeah.
So you're talking about the three stages of realization, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So at the Paramatma stage, when one is doing their sadhana, so to what degree we should emphasize that we are being guided by Paramatma rather than confusing it with our mind trying to...
Oh yeah, that's called subjective and objective realization. Krishnadas Kaviraj talks about it. See, we don't have subjective realizations. We are all contaminated. So anything coming from our mind, always take it with a pinch of salt.
So how do we discriminate whether it's speaking to the Paramatma?
The Paramatma is not speaking to us. We are not at that stage. At least I'm not at this stage. So follow the acharyas. Objective realization. Always act on the objective realization. Subjective is there, okay, but if it is right or wrong, it's very hard to say.
So what techniques as bhakti yogis are recommended by the acharyas to,
It's very simple. Get up in the morning, chant your rounds, and act according to your varna and ashram. So they go parallel for a sadhana, for a sadhaka. One cannot ignore it. That's why Prabhupada was adamant about establishing the varnas and ashramas. What generally people are thinking, people are not really worried about should I eat or not eat. They're not thinking about is Paramatma is telling me to eat or not eat. People are not thinking, should I need to get a job or not to get a job. Say, according to your ashrama where you're in, if you're a student, if you're a young kid, you're not worried about getting a job. Your job is to study. It's locked in. The objective realization is already presented. And as a student, you study. You study scriptures, you understand the basics. And when you become 20, 25, you're not, now should I get married, should I not get married? No, the instruction is if you're not celibate, if you can't control your senses, yeah, because it's a guide. So you don't unnecessarily break your head. Should I need to do that or should I not do that? Should I have a child or should I not child? No. If you get married, you have a child. If you have a problem with the senses, you get married. Or should I retire from family life? You should not retire from family life. No. At the right age, when the kids are grown up, you retire from family life. So the objective instructions is given in the Varnashram system for people following devotional service.
So we don't have to squeeze.
You don't need to worry too much about it. Yeah, too much about it. Yeah, if a person's natural inclination is same thing applies to what you do for a living. So if a person's natural inclination is to live simple life, just happy with a little bit of what they have, they like to teach, they like to read, Brahminical. But if you have strong desire to have build real estates and do this and that, okay. If you're not saying don't do it, just saying just do it properly. Just go become a Vaishya or go and get a job because we're all Shudras in this age. So to take the guesswork out of it.
Not to use our mundane.
Mundane, yeah. Like the subjective, I'm not ignoring the subjective. Subjective, if I went by my subjective, I'll be.
So that's Krishna's personal reciprocation, right?
Yeah.
Discriminate that in not contaminated state is my question, like other energies.
You would know if your state is contaminated or not. Yeah, I can't judge. I would know what is my state. And then you make a call. If I'm free from contamination, yes, Paramatma is speaking to me. Paramatma in contaminated state makes necessary arrangements, either material or spiritual, based on your karma or based on your interest, enthusiasm. He makes necessary arrangements. He makes an arrangement for a guru. He makes arrangement for these nice boys go and distribute books. Makes that arrangement. Puts A and B together. But what you do with it is you have to run with it. Yeah. But it's not like Paramatma is. If that is the case, hey. If I have a direct phone line, I know exactly what to do.
That's where we get confused.
Yeah. We don't have that phone line. We might fantasize ourselves having that phone line, but we don't. Yeah. So the subjective and objective has to be. The subjective has to align with the objective. Yeah. And devotional service. Devotional service is important. Varnashram is subsidiary, but don't ignore devotional. That's objective. Both. So if you come to the realization that I should not eat karmi food, that's good because it's objectively verified. But you come to the conclusion that I'm traveling, it's all right. I just eat food here and there, a little bit of onion. Paramatma told me I got a dream. No, that's you just being you're just being a rascal. Because it's not verified by the objective realization.
So that part only is that we can see in 7.11 and 12 chapters.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the 7. It's that particular topic, that particular set of verses is absolute for devotees. Devotees should lead their lives based on those principles. Yeah. If you don't leave those principles, it means Krishna is not happy. We claim to be a devotee, pure devotees or whatever we claim. But 7, 11, 8 to 12. Narada Muni, this is what. I don't want you to cheat. I don't want you to lie. I want you to be clean. I want you to be equiposed. I want you to consider all living entities as a resident, as where I reside. Yeah. Be merciful, be tolerant. That's called a civilized human being. And Swadhyaya, you have to read. Devotees say, I don't need to read, I'll just chant Hare Krishna. But that's not what Narada Muni says. You have to follow that. Oh, for Krishna I'm going to cheat. No, no. You can't. Because that makes Krishna unhappy. How can you act on a principle to please Krishna, which is actually displeasing Krishna? Now I'm going to cheat somebody so that I can use that money for Krishna. Krishna says no. Yeah. So it's very important. The 7, 11, 8 to 12, one has to lead their life based on those principles. Yes. All right. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.